Which faction should you choose in Lord of the Rings Rise to War? In this video, I'm going to break down a quick overview of which commanders are the very best, the perks that each faction will get, your position on the map, and also the special unit. So stick around in this video for a quick overview of the different factions and which ones you should choose. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today I've got to break down the faction choice because I'm going to be honest. At the start of the game, it is very confusing. Like, which faction should you go for? You don't know anything about the game yet. You don't know, like, is army march speed good, or do I care about conscription speed or conscription cost, and do I care about evil or good, and so on. So I'm going to break this down, starting with good, then getting a quick look at evil. And although I'm a specialist, I would say on the good side because I've played through that twice, I will give some recommendations for the evil side as well, based off of feedback that I've gotten. And by the way, it's not a coincidence I have Rohan on the screen. I think they are one of the strongest choices. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, but just one quick reminder at the start of this video that if you want to play with random people, then this advice is really relevant. And if your group is trying to figure out which faction to choose, I think the guidance in this video is going to be relevant. But the best thing you can do as an individual, if you haven't already, is join a group. And the reason I say that is that, my gosh, a coordinated group is going to be so powerful and important. And 99.99999% of your headache in this game will be around being in a group that is not organized. I assure you and promise you, in fact, I guarantee you that playing with people that lead in different ways than you would want to play with is just going to be a deal breaker. So find the right group and it will enhance your fun tremendously. But anyways, let's assume you've found that group and you're picking which one. I think Rohan is almost certainly the strongest for good. And there's another contender here that I'm going to talk about. And there's not exactly any bad choices on the map here, so just throw that out there. But the reason I really like Rohan is that, first of all, she's starting with Eowyn. And in case you were wondering, how do I know she's the one? Well, her picture is sort of in this video, but also it says in the bottom over here, you can recruit the commander Eowyn by joining other factions. That's at the bottom of the screen, by the way, just in case you didn't see that. So Eowyn is a very shockingly good cavalry commander. I mean, mounted units, she's just insane. So if mounted units sounds like something you will want to do, and let me just spoil this for you and say you should want to do this, yeah, she's really good. She's one of the top commanders you should be working on. And I covered that, by the way, in my tier list. She is the strongest commander, card up in the top. You can get her other ways with other factions, but you start with her in this faction, and that is helpful to at least start with the commander. Now, in addition, you get Army March Speed 3%, and that's a fine bonus. It's not amazing. It's definitely relevant all the time because I feel like the majority of this game, I'm walking places, and then for 5 seconds, there's an actual battle, and then you're walking to the next place. So, March Speed is actually really good, and the Martial Special Unit is really strong. It does a lot of front-loaded damage at the start of the fight, which is very powerful, especially with Eowyn. So you get like the full package deal. You're on the rails. It's so easy to understand how to make the most powerful, I feel like, tier 1 commander even more overpowered with the best unit you can get. It's a T4 unit. Yep, Rohan is, in my estimation, the #1 pick. And your position, by the way, is in the middle of the map. So you could have a lot of fighting to do, which, depending on how you want to play the game, is either fun or terrifying. I think it should be very fun, but if you wanted to avoid fighting, Rohan is probably not the right pick for you. Now, my #2 pick for good, by the way, is going to be the dwarves. And I did play as the dwarves my first time running through Season 1. And there are 3 phenomenal reasons that this is one of the best factions to pick. And they're all on the screen already. The first is Dwalin. And Dwalin is a commander that is very, very strong, both for taking tiles and battling other players. He's just all around amazing, and he's the best tier 1 commander for taking out Balrogs and dragons, which will award you a lot of gold. So he is a phenomenal pickup, even though he's not my starting commander right now, with me playing on Lindon. I'm working on Dwalin because he's that good of a commander, and I expect I will be using him for a non-trivial amount of the end game fighting. But in addition, they have conscription time of 5%. That's troop training, everybody. This is not going to matter to you at the start of the game, really, because you're not going to have enough resources to be troop training 24/7. But in the end game, you need the troops. And how do you get more troops? You train them. How do you train them? You need more conscription speed, baby. This is one of the most relevant end game buffs or end season buffs that you can possibly have, I feel. So I really like the 5% conscription time. I think it's exceptional. Is it back-breaking or game-breaking? No, but it's very good. Follow that up with the Iron Warrior Special Unit. This is just a very, very tanky frontliner. It's one of the best tanky frontliners that you can possibly have, I feel, on the good side. It's just amazing. And for pairings like Gimli that are going to, protect one unit by making your dwarves take damage. Oh my God, man. These Iron Warriors are phenomenal. They're great for PvP. They're great for PvE. They're just all around exceptional. And Erebor is in the upper right part of the map. So if you want to avoid some fighting, you can. However, you're going to have a long journey to battle your way into the middle, which is doable, but you're going to need to work together as a faction to relocate on the map to get there. Now, those are my really top tier choices for the side of good. And I want to cover the other good choices just so you get a sense of kind of what they're like, okay? And they're great, good, great. I don't know. They're also, there's no bad choice here because you can get all these other commanders other ways, but let me just run through the other ones now that I've listed my kind of top two here. There's also Gondor. Gondor awards you Faramir. He's not one of my favorite commanders. That's because he's good for tipping, but not, I guess, doesn't have as many points you could allocate for combat. I think the Swan Knight is a fine special unit, and the construction time is good in the beginning of the game, but will be irrelevant in the end game once you've built everything, and like you will have built everything toward the end of your season. So I think it's a fine choice, but it's not my top tier choice. Now, I think perhaps a better choice might be to get a look at Lothlorien. You're going to get Haldir, who's really solid. In my tier list, I probably underrated him slightly. 5% commander experience gain is very good. I feel like that never stops being relevant. I'm constantly leveling up commanders. Almost toward the entire, the whole season, I'm leveling up new commanders, to be honest. So I feel like that is a really great perk. The March Warden is a fine ranged unit that, when you have it, it will be your ranged unit of choice. I think Lothlorien's position in the center of the map and very close to Eagles is really quite nice, especially because Eagles work really well with Haldir. So, yes, this is a great choice, and I think it will be fine to make. Looking to Arnor, you also get Faramir, which, again, he's not my favorite. Reducing the construction cost by 5% is probably better than the construction time, in my opinion, because you are going to be so strapped for resources. So in many ways, I actually really like this. The Ranger of the North is a fine unit. It's very tanky and very good for taking tiles, but I don't know. Taking tiles, it gets a bonus when you're fighting on non-structure land. So I assume land where you don't have a fort down. I don't know. I think it's fine. It might be better than I'm giving it credit for, to be perfectly honest. I haven't used it. I've really fought against it. But at the end of the day, I just don't love Faramir as a starting commander choice, to be honest. Last but not least for the side of good is Lindon. This is what I'm playing right now. I feel like this perk is one of the worst perks. Praised land, wood and grain collection yield. Yikes. This is not amazing. I guess in some ways, I don't know, man. I'm doing gathering now, sure, but gathering wood and gathering grain, I would so much rather have the conscription speed. Haldir is a fantastic starting commander. I'm using him to take tiles now with tremendous success. And the Noldor or Noldor Longshot, I'm told is just kind of okay. I haven't used it yet, but there are probably ways to break this commander or this special unit type. It attacks every other turn, but does a bunch of damage. So if you can get it to take extra attacks, that seems really OP. So with the right combination, you can break it, but it does seem like sort of a specialized unit. And we chose Lindon because we thought it would be a less popular faction for the restart group that I did, and we wanted to get just as many people as we possibly could into the faction playing with us that wanted to, and thank goodness we picked one that we thought would be less popular because, yeah, I mean, we filled up the entire faction. So I think that Lindon is fine, but again, my number 1 and number 2, slam dunk, are Rohan and Erebor, in that order, big time. Now, on the side of evil, I haven't played evil, but I can still kind of advise on the commanders and the special units and the perks, and I get the impression that of the evil factions, Rhun is one of the stronger choices. The commander here, I'm told, is really good with cavalry, and this perk is pretty good. Eastern Traveler, damage dealt to non-player armies plus 10%. So that means when you're taking keeps and you're fighting non-player armies, you get a perk. It means when you're fighting for tiles, you do more damage. So it gives you a nice start to the game, which in turn means you'll have less dead troops, which saves you resources, which saves you conscription time. I actually think it's pretty good. And the War Chariot, oh my god, is such a savage counter to melee units. I think that Rhun is probably my number 1 pick if I were going with evil. Now, without ranking the other ones, but just kind of reviewing where these are at, I would kind of recommend maybe Angmar as one of the next best choices. I really don't like the siege damage boost. Like, it's fine. It might be slightly relevant. And in fact, to be perfectly honest, you will be sieging things throughout the end game. So, like, yes, siege damage boost is good. I just don't know how much 5% actually, like, is relevant for you. In other words, if you're attacking something, and if all you needed was a tiny bit more and you would have destroyed it, okay, siege damage is good. And for those of you that are new to the game, siege damage is what you need to do to take down somebody's fort or somebody's settlement. You have a certain amount of siege durability, and you have to do siege damage to reduce that durability down to 0, and then it's destroyed. So you will use the extra siege damage, and you don't have to do anything special to get the benefit of this. But, like, unless the 5% is the difference between having to do an extra attack or not, then it's not doing anything for you. See what I mean? The special unit is solid. It's tanky, and it increases its own damage over time. I think that Angmar is a solid choice. I think that Agzok is a fine commander. I don't have experience using him personally or fighting against him a ton. But from what I seem to have read about him, he would be a fine choice, and you wouldn't be ashamed to have him as a starting commander. The last 2 that I want to talk about are Isengard and Mordor. And let me start with Mordor. Mordor gives you a Land of Darkness boost, resource production plus 5%. Now, you do need resources at the start of the game really badly. At the end of the game, your tile situation should be such that you really don't get much benefit from this. And the Ravager is sort of a curiosity for me as a special unit. So let me talk about what this does. It qualifies as a large unit, which is a big downside. There's a lot of unit types that do extra damage to large units, but the Ravager is freaking tanky and has a 50% chance to do all damage to all enemies in a single turn. Whoa. Like, that seems really good to me, except for the fact that certain units are going to hard counter your Ravagers. So I feel like the idea of this could be really cool, but in some ways you're also really vulnerable, strangely enough, for the units that do extra damage to large units. So as an example, there's a mounted elf unit that is going to do extra damage to large units. There is the axe thrower for the dwarves that does extra damage to large units and melee units, which the Ravager counts as both. And although you can get access to different unit types, regardless of kind of what faction you are. So elves can get access to those axe throwers as well, by the way, the dwarven axe throwers, just kind of later on. There's just a lot of things that can kind of counter the Ravagers, which makes me kind of second guess, like, is that where you want to be? I don't know. And then last but not least is Isengard. And they have a conscription cost reduction of 10%. Their starting unit is Ugthak, and I probably pronounced that incorrectly. And their special unit is the Snagathrak. This is a really weird special unit. It does damage to one of the other marches in your army, but then substantially boosts their own damage by a lot, if I'm understanding correctly. So the Snagathrak is kind of a weird one that has the potential to do a lot of damage, which I think units that do weird stuff like that have the potential to be broken in the right context. I think the Snagathrak could be pretty cool to play with. I haven't personally used it myself. Again, of all these choices, it feels like my top 3 would be Rohan, Erebor, and Rhun, but I am no master of the evil side of things. So if you've got guidance there that is counter to that, or that you'd recommend, please do leave a comment down below. That way others can get a look and they can understand and see themselves. And if you found this video helpful, throw a like on here and consider subscribing. I think the choice is, again, like really, really easy. As long as Rohan isn't full, you pick it. And if it is full, I don't know, wait a day and then pick it. It's just that freaking good. And until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. If you're looking for another video to help you in the early game, I will have my ultimate beginner's guide card up in the top. Check it out.